Welcome everybody today to Adelaide Biomed City's Minireviews webinar series. And today we will focus on the medical devices. My name is Yvette van Inenam and I'm the CEO of Adelaide Biomed City, the Health and Medical Innovation District in the heart of Adelaide. And I will be your chair today. But before introducing the speakers, I'd like to acknowledge the Ghana people, the original custodians on the lands, the custodians of the lands. I host this webinar on this land today. And I'd like to pay my respect to the elders, both past, present, and future. I also would like to welcome our Australian, South Australian, national and international attendees today, and also the one that are looking back at the recordings. These weekly short webinars we're doing already since end of 2020 as a pilot, and they're organized for researchers, clinicians, students, entrepreneurs and industry that are residing here in South Australia or anywhere across the globe to get really a deeper insight around what's happening in South Australia, and also to help you link up with potential partners, new opportunities of new knowledge. So we record these sessions and we place them on our Adelaide Biomed City website. We're creating a kind of a TEDx database with all these videos, quite a wide variety we already collected throughout the years. And the topics they are ranging from health data, registries, imaging and AI, to cancer research, genomic nutrition, medtech, as we are here today. So just use the search function if you're interested in finding a little bit more out about South Australia in the areas that you're interested in. So today, let's move to the topic of today. We have two presenters, and I first like to welcome Andrew Rogers from Andrew Rogers Industrial Design, ARID. He has developed and taken to market more than 300 products, I believe. He's also a multi-award winner designer with extensive experience across numerous categories in design and commercialization. And the clients are from across Australia, South Australia, but also across Australia, and also his international customer base is growing. So if you look at medical, I've just looked at the website, of course, and in the medical space, you know, they're working on devices ranging from optomic instruments and microscopes that are produced here in South Australia and exported across the world. So I really want to give a warm welcome to Andrew. Thank you for joining us today. And I will hand over to you now. But before I do want to ask all the attendees today to ask any questions you have during the presentation through the Q&A button at the bottom, and I will make sure I will address them to Andrew when he finishes his presentation. Hand over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Yvette. First of all, what I'd like to do today is present a small sample of the products that I've designed in the medical industry, and then talk about the design process that I undertake in nearly all of the projects, including medical products, but also a vast range of industrial, commercial and domestic products. So what I'd like to start off with is just a brief introduction so you can understand my business, my company, and then go into the process that we go through. Just share this screen. Sorry. Always good. Is that sharing now? No.
Yes, no, it is.
Now it is. Okay, thank you. So I established Andrew Rogers or ARID in 1988 to provide design services for a range of manufacturing industries. My original concept was to provide design services and then allow people to go on and manufacture the products for themselves. What happened very shortly after commencement of the company was I found that people didn't understand how to manufacture the product. So I went from providing a simple design service to be able to provide a full turnkey design and manufacturing solution. I've brought to production more than 350 products over the last 35 years and more than 75 medical products. If If I want to list them all, there's a very broad range, but they range from anaesthetic workstations through to oximeters for use in home and in hospital, digital posture control devices that are used in psychological analysis of how people are studying and working with digital devices, X-ray machines, a whole various range of products. As an example, one of the products that we worked on over years was an ophthalmic microscope used by the Fred Hollows group, both in surgical procedures in theatre and also in the field. Another product that I spent a lot of time working on was actually in China to help with a Chinese company that was working with nurses to assist with taking diagnostic and observations for the patients while they're under their stay in the hospital. These were in effect issued to each patient so that to reduce the amount of staff time that was needed while working in the hospital. The big surprise that I found with this particular project is that at first I thought it was a small quantity that we were making, but the first order was in excess of 500,000 products. So we rolled out from an initial concept through to trial production in 6 or 8 weeks, and then into full production of more than 500,000 products in less than 6 months. Another product that I've worked with Carl Zeiss, starting here in Adelaide, which was with Solar Optical to start with, was a device for eye tracking and working how to use multifocal length lenses in an eye set. Now, this device takes away the need for a practitioner to adjust and modify and work with the glasses that are being prescribed, and allows the computer to generate a computer aided improved prescription, so that the prescription can be automatically generated while the patient waits. And this in Europe, where these are set up, it can turn out a custom-made prescription in less than 35 minutes. Another product which is close to home here in Adelaide was for the Pipette Company, which is now run by Coopers Medical. This was a product where we're working with packaging to ensure that the micro-injecting pipettes arrived safely to the destination. These are very, very fragile glass pipettes used for in vitro fertilization and also biopsies and diagnosing the product. The packaging served 3 purposes. One was to ensure that the product arrived safely. Second was to ensure that it was easy to identify the different kinds of pipettes. And the third was to make it very easy to automatically load the pipettes into the microscopes. Again, this was a product that we took from the initial concept, working very closely with the customer so that we understood what the issues and the problems were, and then taking it all the way through to a fully delivered product. I think at last count, we've delivered about 4 million of these products to the customer. This is a product which is fairly topical at the moment. Hopefully we're not going to need them moving into the future, but I returned from overseas to find the world in a pretty interesting place with COVID, and designed a piece of PPE for use for forward-facing staff in banks and hardware stores and delicatessens, etc. But what I found was Health SA had a dire need for PPE, and we quickly pivoted to be able to manufacture more than 70,000 of these face shields for Health SA, which have been used by staff for protection, but also in the situation of collecting COVID samples. This is a product that was from 0 to full production in less than 6 weeks. And we're very proud to be able to say that we won a design award for it at the same time. This is a product which is not related to medical as we started on the project. It was to understand the full range of how a product is packaged the full understanding of safety, the provenance from beginning to very end for wine. Now, what we've found since starting the project is we have a lot of interest in medical products. So with this RFID tag, we can actually place that onto a medical device or a medical product, and then be able to track it from its original source all the way through to the end use, and also ensure through the digital tamper evident seal that the product hasn't been opened or used. It can have all information including instructions how to use it, the life of the product, and even a link to a video via the internet. So again, this is a product that we recently won a design award for. Our studio located in Adelaide is staffed by 5 qualified designers. We have our own in-house design capability and prototyping capability. So we go from concept through to fully functional prototype here in Adelaide. This enables us to conveniently test, prove, and secretly demonstrate that the product works before we start to need to worry about patents or confidentiality issues. Our facility in Shenzhen in China, we have a clean environment, not medical grade clean, but a clean environment for building and assembling products that are used in semi-clean environments. We are also quite familiar with the requirements of sterilisation, etc. What I'd like to quickly go through here is the design wheel, as we refer to it, the process overview. And these are very important stages in the design process. I think the initial stage of defining the project, the objectives, and understanding how the product will work is something that the customer is very familiar with. But once we get beyond that, the design concept, a feedback loop, providing information and getting people to understand how our project works. Design for testability is something that I bring into the design process very early, a design thinking methodology whereby we try and explore and understand how the product can be tested before we even start manufacturing it. This is a really important aspect that is often overlooked in design, particularly of new products. If we can design a new innovative product and we can be ensured that we've designed a testing routine and regime into the product at the very beginning, we can then be sure that the product comes off the line. Other stages to look at are engineering specifications, point of sale packaging, whether it's bulk transport or individual components. We also look at graphic design, and as I touched on earlier, we're looking at RFID tags to ensure that we've got continuity of provenance and also technical security of safety of the product. The next stage will be to look at the tooling samples, the production line, and testing and production. As I said, that links back to the original design intent to make sure that we have a product that is easy to test. With a designer providing the full turnkey solution, it enables continuous improvement. So the next time we do go through a production run, we can roll into the design process another iteration of production without a full rerun of the design process. As an overview of how we work in the studio, the design and CAD work is all done in 3D. So we work fully in 3D, solid 3D. We do our prototyping in-house, which includes initially 3D printing. We have various 3D printing machines. We have CNC machines for making more accurate prototypes. And we also have visual measuring equipment to measure down to 3 decimal places of a millimetre so that we can make sure that the units fit together, which allows us to close the loop on the design cycle, prove that the design that we have designed works before we move on to the tooling and the production stages. Once we've completed the production stage, ARID can then manage all of the external production for larger volume. Now, this can be done either in country in Australia, or it can be done overseas. The way that we work is we always work closely with known partners And then we have a closed loop situation. So the customer, the client is only dealing with the design management team, not having to deal with the individual suppliers on the way through. We've found that this ensures that we get a much better quality control. Some of the products, some of the customers that we've worked with over the years, some very well known, some not so well known, but we like to work with people that are developing products that make a difference for the customers. And at that point, I'd like to close for a moment and see if there's any questions in relating to what I've just answered.
Thank you, Andrew. If you're okay to stop sharing so we can see, yeah, thank you. So any of the audience, please feel free to ask a question. If a new one comes up, I will check in the meantime. There's a question, and that's mainly relating, like in the presentation you showed products like the oxygeometer and the seal. And you probably have certain areas of expertise with you and your team, or can you kind of deliver quite broadly as well? Because if you look at the medical sector and the variety of designs and products needed are rather diverse in there. Could you share a little bit if there's specific expertise area in your team, or you're happy to work really broadly for?
This is a question that we often get asked. One of the things that's really important to understand is that design is a process. So we're not designers of a specific product. We are professionals in the design field, which means that every project that we approach it with fresh eyes and understanding of the manufacturing process. But we always approach it the problem-solving stage of the project from the very concept. So we'll sit down, we'll work through the research stage and understand the problem before we start to solve it. I always like to think of designers as problem solving, and we provide problem solving with mechanical, physical products and problem solving with style.
Another question came out related to that. You shared some of the timelines it took for some of the projects you showed us, but what are the more general timelines for product development? Also take into account all the standards of our sector.
Okay, something like something as simple as the pipette holder, which was a single part injection molded product. The design cycle might take 2 to 3 weeks. The tooling cycle could be 6 to 10 weeks, depending on the complexity. But then the compliance sometimes can take many months and sometimes a year, and sometimes even longer, depending on how complicated, how much detail there is in the compliance and how many regulatory bodies are required to be talking to.
Thanks. There's one more question I'd like to finish off with. You know, as a clinician, a researcher, an entrepreneur with an idea and need manufacturing to produce that, I can imagine that a lot of people will go directly to manufacturers instead of first going through the step of designer. Could you elaborate a little bit on that, if that happens a lot, and the importance of putting that designer layer in it? Or
we get a number of customers that have gone directly to manufacturers and been dissatisfied. Many are satisfied, but some are dissatisfied. One of the problems of going directly to a manufacturer is that you will be restricted to the style, methodology, or the capability of that manufacturer. If you come to a designer, as a designer, we're much more aware of the various different kinds of manufacturing methodologies and capabilities that there are around. So one person might want to do injection molding for everything. Another might want to do machining of the components, which means that you don't get the full gamut of capabilities put into your product. But also, manufacturers may not have experience of working in the medical industry or in the other kinds of packaging industries. So bringing in the whole range of services allows us to provide a fully professional turnkey solution, taking into consideration all the various issues that a client or a end user may require. I often like to think of the idea that the designer, the end user task should be really easy. So it should be really easy for the end user to use the product. The next person down the scale is the person that's doing the assembly and the manufacturing. It should be relatively easy for them. The tool makers and the people that are involved in getting that ready, that job should be harder, but the hardest job of all should be for the designer. So the designer shouldn't make their job easy to compensate for the fact that it's more difficult for the end user to use. We should always have the end user in mind.
And correctly use a wide range of preferred manufacturers inside and outside Australia to deliver.
Exactly right,
yeah. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you very much for joining us here today. And we will further promote it across a system after today for people to view your webinar as well who weren't able to join today. So then I will now go to our second presenter, Stefan Blakeney. Stefan is the National Innovation Manager of MDPP, the Medical Device Partnering Program, well known to many of us here in South Australia and also nationally. He is and has been very active in the South Australian health and medical sector for many years and well connected as well. He has worked for medical device companies in the UK and Australia, so been internationally engaged in this sector as well. Also worked for the Department for Trade and Investment, very much connected within our government. And he's also in the steering committee of the Bridge Tech program. That's a national professional development program that trains researchers and entrepreneurs how effectively to navigate the commercialization pathway of new devices, medical devices. So it's evident that Stefan has worked with many innovators from across Australia. And thank you, Stefan, for joining us today. And we're keen to hear more about MDP program and how you and the national programs can support our bright researchers, clinicians, and entrepreneurs.
Perfect. Thanks for that. Just share my screen. Hopefully that's the right screen. I can't see my green square, but hopefully that was right.
You do have it on a present. It's not on. Yeah, this is better. Use full presenter mode. Oh, can you do it again, because we saw the separate screens. Yeah, this is better.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So as Yvette has mentioned, so my name's Stephen Blakeney, National Innovations Manager for MDPP. I'm going to do a really quick intro to the program, but I know lots of people have already come across us, so I don't want to spend too long talking about what we do. But if anyone does have any more questions, then more than happy for people to follow up. So we've been going for more than 14 years, completed in that time over 120 projects, and really worked with people originally starting in South Australia for most of those 14 years. But over the last few years, we have become a national program, so working with companies from across the country. And that's just a snapshot of some of the facts and figures around how we've been performing over the last few years. And talk about our vision. So really MDPP's aim is to help to make Australia the fastest place in the world to take a medical device idea from an idea and take it to the market. And that includes a lot of what Andrew's been talking about around, sort of good design practice and making sure, so for us, when innovators come to us, making sure that they're aware of who they should be talking to and why, and not and sort of really opening the door and making sure that they're aware of some of their options. The process that we have, and I won't touch too much on this, but we do 250 hours of technical work and a 30-hour market report. It was a small co-contribution, and we don't retain any of the IP. More than happy to go into this in more detail if anyone wants to contact me, but I will just mention the workshop stage, which is a particularly valuable stage in our application process. And the idea is that what we want to do is we want to do a little bit of technical development work, but really we also want to create connections, make sure that when a device comes, it has the right clinicians around it. So sometimes when we get ideas from researchers, they may struggle to connect in with the clinical community, with been very fortunate over the 14+ years that we've been running that we have some very good connections in that space. And so we're often able to get some clinicians from around the country to join. It can be regulatory consultants or manufacturers or industrial designers or anyone really who we think sort of post-project is going to be able to help to continue the idea going forwards. It also is really helpful for us because we get to see, particularly when it's clinicians talking about an idea, and they'll ask questions that we don't know because we don't have the specialist expertise. So really, really useful process. I'm sure Andrew would agree that this is something that many people in their design process should be doing anyway, is getting that end user feedback before you start. And we don't always get it before we do at the beginning of our process. Sometimes people have already done quite a lot of design and development work before they get to us without having done this, but hopefully we catch them early. We're also a partner on some MTP Connect grant programs, so the Targeted Translation Research Accelerator. The BTB program on the right has recently finished its final round and the projects have closed. And the Clinical Translation Commercialisation in MedTech in the middle, which is one of the newer MTP Connect grant programs, which I think applications have just closed, and I think that might be the final round, so there may not be any more opportunity to apply in that, but TTRA definitely has one more round to go. And so we provide just feedback predominantly for medical device applications. We do some of the assessment, and we also have colleagues here who help to prepare people for getting their applications in as well. Just quickly, we have on our website, we also have a capability directory. So if you go onto mdpp.org.au, you'll find this has some information about local companies. So please have a look. And I won't touch on any of the case studies. I'll just flash them up, but I'll save that for another day so I can get onto a bit more content. But these are just a few examples of some of the companies that we've worked with. So what I really want to talk about is the next challenge for us to address. So thinking back to the vision and how to help people get a medical device idea to market. And really, we started as a South Australian program and we saw some of the challenges in South Australia, but more and more, and now that we're a national program, we're realizing that this isn't unique to South Australia, that there's actually issues for the whole country. So probably not surprisingly, but around the regulatory and quality management system side of medical devices. So just a really, really brief overview, and people may already have some awareness of this, but I just want to touch as much as you can in a couple of minutes. So the different regulators, obviously in Australia, we have the TGA, we have different classes of medical device, from class 1, which is the lowest, to class 3, or active implantable medical device. Depending on the class of medical device you are, dictates whether you need a quality management system at all, which you don't in the case of a class 1. But as you move up, you either need elements of a quality management system or you need the full quality management system. For any of these devices, you'll have to apply to the TGA to get ARTG, Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods, listing. So you can't sell or promote these devices without being listed on the ARTG. And there is a bit of a process. I won't go into that process, but there is a bit of a process. But particularly, there's obviously, I think, through COVID, we've all learnt the phases of pharmaceutical trials. It's probably a little less known what the medical device trial process is. And in part, that's because it's different for different devices, and numbers can vary depending on the type of device. But this is taken from the TGA's clinical trial handbook and gives you sort of an idea of some of the wording and some of the size of testing. And I think it's interesting to note, so you have a pilot study that's quite a small number. This is from first in human studies, typically, and you'd also have a pre-market pivotal, which is sort of your testing that gets you ready for regulatory approval. But in medical devices, it doesn't stop at the point of getting the regulatory approval. There's a big focus on post-market surveillance and making sure that you continue to monitor it, because in some cases, there are things that would be a very low incidence that you would only pick up post-market, and you have to make sure you're still able to identify those issues. And this is the medical device essential principles checklist. We're going into detail on that. It's on the TGA website. Again, this is something that any TGA listed product has to go through. It's quite self-explanatory. Normally people get a regulatory consultant to sort of help to guide through this. But in many class 1 devices, most people would be able to do this themselves. But that sort of governs the main parts of a medical device that you need to be able to address. And a lot of the medical device standard is around risk management and identifying risks and mitigating them. There is a very particular format, so taking from the ISO 13485 quality management system, there's a particular format around how you structure really the paperwork around your design and development, which all builds into, so taking the user needs, building the specifications from that, and then there's verification and validation. Again, Andrew's touched on this, but in terms of the paperwork, often there can be differences between who takes on the sort of legal manufacturer responsibility, who physically manufactures it. They don't have to be the same organization. Sometimes a company with just an office will be the legal manufacturer, even if they're not actually manufacturing product, and that's okay. But it's just really around the legal responsibilities and who keeps that paperwork. I think I'm probably out of time, and I'm not going to try and talk through this slide, which is quite complicated. But really, my point around this is just to identify that there is a huge minefield, and we really do have a lack of trained people in Australia addressing this side of medical device development. There's great organisations who can help. Often sort of the university, I think, level, we're not training people specifically for medical devices. So we're working on that as part of our next sort of vision for where MDPP goes next. So I guess watch this space.
Yeah, thank you, Stefan. If anybody wants to have another look at the complicated slides at the end, the recordings will be online in probably 2-3 days at the max. And if you like to share this video with some other people that you think is relevant to, please do. I have a question. We're a couple minutes over, but I have one question for you, Stefan. And you worked across Australia. You advise and work with many innovators. And what do you see are the biggest problems for the medtech startup? So can you help them prevent to make mistakes and go smoother through the process?
Yeah, so really, I guess building on what I was talking about, one of the issues is for funding for medical. So we're pretty good at funding R&D, sort of early stage ideas, research, and we come up with some really great ideas in Australia. What we're not very good at is translating them. And I think a lot, there's organization or there's grant programs that try to help to address the translation. I think the problem is that, so just generally speaking, for a medical device, to get to the point where you're really investable, you've got to have done a clinical trial and have regulatory approval. And that is a big undertaking to get to that point. And our investors in Australia are quite nervous about, for some reason, pharmaceuticals, I think, attracts a lot more investment, I think, because it's high risk, high reward. And medical devices is a little bit more traditional. It's still, it's not as high risk, but there's still risk. And the rewards maybe not as high as pharmaceuticals, but there's maybe a bit more of a trade-off. So people are a bit more nervous. So to get people to clinical trial quicker is really crucial, because that's the point where suddenly we can take these ideas and really grow them in Australia. So I think addressing sort of fundamentally the skills gap to make sure that because we've had examples of companies that, so they might take sort of 5 to 10 years to get TGA approval, and there's no need for it to take that long. It's just that people make mistakes. The big companies swallow up the trained people, and we're sort of left with people trying to work it out as they go. And I think we can do better.
Yeah, and I think the MDPP program can really support to startups and entrepreneurs in that. So thank you both for today. If there are any questions in the future, please feel free to contact them directly. Yeah, I wish everybody a wonderful evening for now, and thanks for joining.
Thanks, Yvette. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.